Red Wings signed Patrick Kane, 2.75 prorated. So they still have cap flexibility, but I think there's so many options what you can do with this lineup now. And I think there's some trades, and I do want to talk about some of the trades. So if you look at the two goalies that they have in Husso and Lyon, they have Reimer. And I think they really could utilize Reimer as an asset, as a guy you could actually move and get a draft pick or two back. I think the Oilers are the obvious one. I think if you look at James Reimer, and he sometimes gets really hot, and he's sometimes a very reactionary goalie, momentum-driven goalie. I think he could be a veteran that the Oilers look at. And I honestly think the Red Wings could probably get, based on the fact that he's only on a $1.5 million cap hit, and Alex Lyon's played well for you, I think you get at least a third-round pick for Reimer. So keeping that in mind, Red Wings maybe collect some draft picks. They basically have all their draft picks. And as I said, have cap flexibility. So trade options. I honestly think that Noah Hannafin could be, I know people have talked about that. I think Noah Hannafin could be a real completion of a really solid top six. And I think that ends up being, I mean, you just signed Justin Hall, so that's probably not the guy you move, but why not? I mean, you could. Or you could just cycle Hall and Petrie as the sixth or seventh defenseman, and then you all of a sudden, if you shift Gostisbehere to the right, you could have a top four of Wollman, Seider, Hannafin, Gostisbehere, and then a bottom pair between Sherratt, Petrie, Hall. Because, yeah, I think if you were to move, or if you were to make a move for a guy like Noah Hannafin, you probably trade Olli Maatta, because he's the only guy on that defense that doesn't have a modified or full trade clause outside of Seider, which that's obvious. So I think if you were to maybe package Maatta, a prospect or younger player, and your first round pick, I mean, I think that's more than enough to get Noah Hannafin. And as I said, I think Hannafin would be willing to sign an extension in Detroit. So a guy like that, there's other comparables around the league. I mean, hey, if you want to go for Michigan boy, Torrey Krug, I don't think the Red Wings want to take on that contract, but I think they should acquire maybe a top four guy to really solidify that top four, because they're deep. I mean, they're deep on defense. They're deep up front. I think the Red Wings are one of the deeper teams in the Eastern Conference. Like, I think the fact that you can confidently say, I mean, if they go back to like Veleno, they've been doing Veleno, Larkin, Raymond lately. You drop Fabry down to the fourth. Like, the fact that you could have a fourth line of Kostin, Fabry, Sprong is insane. But Christian Fischer's looked good at times, so those guys, a couple of those guys could be moved. And I wonder if between Fabry and Kostin, I wonder if one of those guys get moved. So if I could put some confidence behind it, I think between Fabry, Kostin, and Reimer, I think we could see at least one or two of those guys dealt. So I would say Krug's kind of not really an upgrade with what they have, but I think Hannafin would be a good target for Detroit. I think maybe they could talk to Edmonton about returning Kostin to the Oilers, because he was a great fit with the Oilers, and maybe the Red Wings take a contract back and draft picks if they include Reimer. I wonder if a guy like McLeod, if the Oilers would be willing to move on from him if they got like some bite in the bottom six, like Kostin and who knows who else they could add. Maybe the Red Wings are willing to retain 50% on Fabry for 2 years if it meant they got more draft picks. But I do think they should consider trading one of Maatta or Hall. They literally just signed Justin Hall, so I don't think that's going to happen. But I think if they had a defense group, Wollman, Seider, Gostisbehere, get a top four guy, whether it's a Hannafin or go down the list, and then have a bottom pair of Sherratt, Petrie would not be that bad. So that's kind of my outlook on the Red Wings, but I love the Patrick Kane addition for them. I wasn't overly excited about it because I think the Atlantic Division is already competitive as it is, but I think if Patty Kane even is like 60 or 70% of what he was before the injury, and again, keep in mind, he's mid-30s at this point, I think being reunited with DeBrincat will help big time. And I also think there's the potential of a power play of DeBrincat, Larkin, Kane, Raymond. I mean, I'll scroll down here and I guess you don't have it here, but I think Seider and Gostisbehere as your two defense quarterbacks in the power play with as many forward options as you have, the Red Wings are looking really good. And then you can't forget like younger guys like Jonathan Berggren coming in for the forward group. And then you think about the defense group, how they could be growing with Edvidson coming in, Wallander. Like, there's just so many guys. Man, Detroit's going to be interesting, man. They're already good. and they're already deep. I honestly just think they need one or two stars in there. And then that's when I look around the league. It's like, okay, who could they acquire in terms of like a star? Well, I mean, there's free agents coming. So I wonder if they just wait. Like, frig, man. Imagine, God forbid, like Nylander hits free agency in Detroit. Stevie Y is willing to toss like $13 million at William Nylander. Imagine a top six. Nylander and Raymond just ripping it up on the wings with Larkin. And then Kane re-signs and plays with DeBrincat. Again, that's not going to happen. But imagine. Like, I think Stevie Y is going to see his team get their feet wet this year and see how deep they are. And maybe you have a first-round matchup where you give, like, say they make the wild card and they face, like, the Rangers or Bruins round one and give one of those two teams a tough time, maybe even beat one of those two teams. Then Stevie Y goes, whoa, we got something here. Then you just sign, like, a big free agent. So Detroit's looking really good. I still question their defense, as I've talked about. But I think acquiring a guy like Hanifin could make a huge difference, or at least a guy that has a solid presence in the top four to offset maybe the pressure on a guy like Seider. And I think that's why Red Wings fans have loved Gostisbehere, because he's kind of done that, right? He's stepped on the power play. He's been huge for them in an offensive way, and they don't really have another guy like Gostisbehere on their defense group. So more mobility on that defense group could definitely help, and that's why I point to a guy like Hanifin, but there's other names out there, and I do think they're going to look at that market. So we'll see. Subscribe, like, comment, guys. Red Wings are buzzing.